So I recorded a Pro Tools session. I called it my username -poem mix, and I've saved it inside my Pro Tools session folder, like all the other Pro Tools sessions that we have. And I've basically dragged in the Peter Piper and She Sells Seashells little sample that I gave to you guys to download. It's on its own track, and I have Option 8 it so to make it stretch all the way across. I have my keyboard shortcuts button on right here. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is normalize this. So to normalize, if you remember, is to select the clip, go to the help menu and type in norm, and you can choose other normalize. There's the plugin. All the defaults are fine. Just hit render. So there you go. Now if you listen to this, especially the P's here.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked.
All the P's have really explosive, and they really pop out, especially in headphones. You can hear them quite well. And if you have good speakers systems, it'll really pop out. So how do we get rid of these? Well, we have to do what's called an EQ on them. So I'm going to zoom in. So I'm going to take the letter T and zoom in, and then zoom into this beginning of this little P right here. So this first word, select it, and I'm going to loop playback. So I'm going to loop that, right click and choose loop, and hit spacebar.
Peter.
Right?
Peter.
See the P right here? It's a little loud. So what we need to do is reduce that, and most of the P problem comes from the lower end, the lower end of the frequencies, and because of the air hitting the microphone. So we need to do that with an EQ. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in even more. I'm going to make this even taller, like so, and zoom in more with the letter T. And I'm going to select the P and a little bit of the rest of the word. So this is the Peter part. Okay. Okay. So now let's reduce this. The way you do that, you use what's called an audio suite plugin. So for the audio suite, we can process the sound automatically. So we're going to go to audio suite, EQ, and let's use a one band EQ, like so. All right, so the one band EQ, we're going to use what's called a high pass filter. That's this thing here, a high pass filter, this button. What that allows you to do is this is the lower end of the frequency, the low frequencies, and these are the high frequencies over here. So what this is essentially doing is cutting out the low end of the frequencies and then allowing the highs to pass through. That's what a high pass frequency is. This button here allows you to change the slope right here. So that's called the Q factor. All right, I want to cut it off pretty sharply, so I want a nice cliff there. So I'm going to put it up pretty high. In fact, the highest it goes. And then you can either drag this little dot right to left, or you can click on this knob and drag up and down to do the exact same thing. And I want to put it right around 300, 200, right around there. And then I'm going to hit render. So watch these waveforms. When I render it, it really shrinks it down. Now that may be a little too much, so I'm going to Command Z and maybe shrink this over here, maybe a little bit here. Move it to the left a little bit, around 100. Okay, so now let's listen back to that. The main idea about reducing explosives is to essentially make the peaks of the beginning of the P be the same height as the rest of the word. Okay, so for me, these are the settings that would work for this particular clip. Now it'll be different for other clips that you have, particularly your clip. So you just have to mess with it and then hit render and see how that works for you for different settings here. Now sometimes you make mistakes and you want to go back to its original, and that's fine. So what you do is, if you do make a mistake, you have to go to slip mode. Make sure you're in slip mode. That's F2 right here. And then you can literally just delete this clip that you've rendered before, and then get your smart tool and drag this back to its initial state. Something like that. And then you can start over. You would select a clip, make sure you have a smart tool, Select the clip again, like so. A little bit of the other part of the word too, and hit render. And then you can trim this back. You can trim this back. Make sure you're in slip mode. Make sure you're in slip mode, and just trim this back a little bit. Okay, so then go find the next big P. Here's one right here.
Piper picked.
Just find the next one and do the same thing. Peter Piper. See this big waveform right here? There it is. So I'm going to select it. Do the same thing. Render it. All right, then trim it back slightly. Something like this. And then find the next one. So let's just do 3 of them so you understand how to do this. So here's the next big one.
Peck a pickle.
There it is. Select it. Render it. Pull it back a little bit. Okay. Anyway, and then you can Command A, or Option A, I should say, Option A. You need to batch fade all this stuff. So once you've selected all these P's and cut them out, then you select everything. You select all these clips like this, and then Command F and batch fade those. Yeah, so adjust as needed if you need to adjust. Okay, so then listen back to it.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper.
And hopefully the P's will be less explosive. So that's how you get rid of explosives.